Is pizza a junk food? Not really. Is it a good food for diabetics to eat? No. And yes. As you watch this video, you're going to get some really good news when it comes to pizza. Many people consider pizza a junk food, but when you consider the ingredients that make up a pizza, they really don't qualify as junk food. Every pizza has some kind of tomato sauce on it, for example, and tomato sauce is made up of, you guessed it, tomatoes. Most of us would not consider the tomato a junk food. And nearly every pizza has a liberal sprinkling of cheese, but hardly anybody would call that a junk food. They have various toppings, usually vegetables and some type of meat, black olives, mushrooms, green peppers, even spinach. And none of these fits into the junk food category. Now, if someone topped their pizza with chocolate, candy, powdered sugar, and Trix cereal, then I would consider that junk food. But the typical pizza really is not junk food. But that doesn't make it necessarily a great food for the diabetic to eat. The problem, of course, is what those toppings go on top of, the bread base, which makes up the foundation for the pizza. Bread isn't a junk food, but for the diabetic, it is a problem food. And that's why many conscientious diabetics just stay away from pizza altogether. And if you're thinking about pizza in its traditional form, that's probably a very good thing to do. But as with many different foods, there are substitutions and alterations which can be made that will enable us to enjoy pizza just about as much as we like. I got the idea when I was in the grocery store with my wife. One thing led to another, and I ended up with a great-tasting pizza which barely affects my blood sugar. We're going to do a test comparing this pizza with the traditional pizza, and in the end, I believe you're going to see that pizza is off the forbidden list, which is very, very good news. Benedicta had a correction that she wanted to make, which was that it was really more her idea than mine to get started in the homemade pizza business. Is that what you wanted to tell people?
Yes, I just wanted people to know that and correct that. He said it was his idea. It was my idea.
Okay, well, it was her idea to get started. I made some modifications. So she saw one of these at the grocery store. One of these pre-cooked, ready-made pizza bases, pizza crusts. And she said, let's make a pizza. How about making a homemade pizza? And what did I say?
That's a good idea, and let's go for it.
I decided to go for it, but I was a little bit nervous and I was a little bit cautious because I turned the pizza over to check out the carbs, which is what I always do with foods. I check out the carbs. Well, this particular one, I don't remember which pizza crust we bought, but this particular one shows 26 grams for a sixth of a crust. And so that was quite a bit, especially that you normally wouldn't eat one piece of pizza anyway, and that's basically one piece of pizza. But I decided to try it and test myself. And do you remember how the test went? It's been quite some time.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good for you, I think. For me, it was iffy. And so even though I was a little moderate in how much pizza I took, I knew that there had to be a little better way. And so the wheels began to turn, and I began to think of what? What did we come up with to try next?
The thin crust.
These tortilla shells. Yeah. Well, one of the most amazing things for diabetics is that in nearly every grocery store, they have these low-carb tortillas. Maybe not this brand necessarily, but they usually have some brand, and sometimes they'll have several brands, and it's just wonderful. I mean, a bread product that's low in carbs. And once again, when I see these, I flip them over and check out the carbs. This particular one says 11 grams of carbs for one shell, which is good, but the best news is it's got a lot of fiber. It's got 6 grams of fiber, so you deduct that because fiber is not going to raise blood sugar. So 11 minus 6 is 5 net grams of carbs for one shell. And so we decided, after trying the regular crust, to try our own special concoction using tortilla shells. But one really wasn't enough, was it?
No.
So what did we come up with?
To make a double.
Yeah, to use 2 shells. And we wanted to kind of come up with a way to sort of bond them together. And so I thought about adding cheese. And we put down 1 shell, put a little cheese around it, put down a 2nd shell, and make the pizza the way one normally would. So I'm going to let my lovely wife, Benedicta, show you how we do it. And we're going to test ourselves while the pizza is being made. We'll eat the pizza, wait an hour, test ourselves again. And unless I really, really am off on this and miss my guess, our blood sugar should be just fine after eating one of these pizzas. So, my love, take it away and show us how it's done. We might want to start with just a little bit of a spray of cooking oil to kind of keep it from sticking, although she half the time or most of the time doesn't even do that, but I threw that in anyway. And what comes next?
We have to put this down and...
We've got some cheese.
Some cheese on it.
So we're going to sprinkle some cheese as an in-between layer, and that'll kind of bond the 2 tortilla shells together a little bit. They still kind of puff up a little bit.
Yeah, you have to spray it around.
Spread it around. Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot. And, you know, when you want to use ingredients, there's just all kinds of low-carb ingredients you can use. So we're not talking about a scarcity of toppings. There's all kinds of things. I happen to like mushrooms, and we've got some black olives. And then, yes?
Yeah. Not to take words out of your mouth, but I just want to show them that I have to flip this over the cheese.
Put the second one down over the cheese.
Yep.
And that's the first step. What are we going to do next?
We have to put some sauce over it. Yeah,
every pizza's going to have some sauce. Now, the easy and the cheap way to do it is just go to your grocery store and buy some spaghetti sauce. Don't put it on too thick. The spaghetti sauce will have some carbs to it. But just spread it around thinly, just to give it that pizza flavor. What kind of a pizza would it be without sauce? So a nice thin coating is not going to add a lot of carbs. And then we are ready for some of the other ingredients and some cheese. You know, every time we make it, I think we make it a little different. We put the cheese on first, we put the cheese on last, we put different ingredients. So there's no hard and fast rules. You can experiment in all kinds of ways to make this pizza. So what are you going to do next, my love? I'll let you make all the choices on the order of the things.
Well, the next thing will be to put a little cheese over that.
Okay, sprinkle some cheese over the sauce. And I used to work at a Pizza Hut a long time ago, so I still remember some of the things. But the pizza that we served and we made was very high carb. This one is very low carb. Remember, 5 grams for 1 tortilla shell. We're using 2 to make it a little thicker because they are thin. But that just makes 10 grams, and that's where most of the carbs are going to come in. What's next?
Well, we just have to put some mushrooms.
Some mushrooms on it. And my favorite, of course, is the pepperonis. I love pepperonis. We've also got a little sausage that I'm going to have Benedicta chop into some small little slices and put on it to make it special. And we'll pop that in the oven. We've got the oven preheating somewhere around 425 to 450. You get it pretty hot. And then you cook it for about, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. Again, it's your preference. If you prefer it a little bit more juicy, you can go maybe 7 or 8 minutes. If you like it nice and crisp, you might want to go 9 or 10 minutes. Lots of ways to experiment. But the point is, by the time this is done, you're going to have what really tastes like a pizza. That's the wonderful thing. I mean, granted, it's not quite as thick of a crust as what you're used to, but it tastes like pizza. You don't have to go the rest of your life without ever tasting pizza again. So we got some black olives. I know a lot of people don't like them. I do.
Well, I think you get the idea. We added slices of sausage, pepperoni, sprinkled it all with a little more cheese, and it was ready for the oven.
And there we go. We have a pizza. It's going to taste like a pizza, but it is not going to affect my blood sugar much at all. So Benedicta is going to make a second one for herself, and then we're going to pop them in the oven. And while they're cooking, we'll test ourselves with our pre-test to see where we start. And then an hour after we finish the meal, we'll test ourselves again. So, we'll see you back in a little while.
While the pizzas were in the oven, we tested our blood sugar to see our starting point, waited about 9 minutes for the pizzas to cook, took them out, and enjoyed a great meal. After we finished our last bite of pizza, we set our timer for 1 hour. When the hour had elapsed, we tested ourselves once again to find our peak. Here is what we found.
Well, our blood sugar tests looked pretty good, didn't they?
Yeah.
Both of ours, we stayed under 120, and that is such an exciting thing. A lot of people wouldn't know or wouldn't care about numbers like that, but for somebody who watches their blood sugar carefully, if you can keep your peak, your post-meal peak under 120, you've done very, very well.
Yes.
Now, Benedicta, you started very, very strong blood sugar-wise. You started with what number?
I started with 88.
She started with an 88, and that is great. And you went up to where 1 hour after the pizza?
After the pizza, I went up to 103.
103, 88
Yes.
to 103. How many point rise would that be?
And that would be about 15 points up.
Exactly, 15 points. So that is really, really good. And mine was almost the same rise, but I started a lot higher than you did. So I started at 104, and I went up to 118, which was a 14-point rise. Interesting, we both rose about the same amount. You just started lower, and you ended up lower. I started higher, ended up higher, but we both rose about the same amount. Now, a 15-point rise, or in my case, 14 points, is basically nothing. I mean, it really isn't a problem at all. And if all my meals only rose 15 points, only raised my blood sugar 15 points, I would be the happiest guy in Texas. But they don't. You know, I could just as easily have eaten a meal that raised my blood sugar 100 points, 125 points, something with a lot of bread and pasta, or a big dessert, and wash it down with some soda. But we were good little boys and girls, weren't we?
Yeah.
And we saw good results. Now, let's talk about the taste. Did that taste at all good, or did you feel like you were being tortured to eat something so nasty as that pizza?
It wasn't nasty at all. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and everything we put in it was so great, well done, and it tastes like yummy. I mean, I was so happy we did that, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I did too. And, you know, one thing I regret, and that is I didn't discover how to make a low-carb pizza until after I had gone many years without hardly ever tasting pizza.
Really?
And then finally, I realized I could eat the thin crust pizza, a few pieces, at one of our local pizza restaurants. And so I do that, but I have to watch, you know, how many portions I have. But here I got full. I enjoyed it. It tasted just like pizza.
Great.
And that was because it was pizza.
It was pizza.
It was pizza. The crust was a little thinner and had more fiber, but that's, of course, what you want. And so, you know, we tried to give you an example of how we do it, but that doesn't mean that's how you do it. There's all kinds of ways you could adjust that. You could add different toppings. You could keep it in the oven longer or shorter, depending on whether you want a juicy pizza with a softer crust or a more dry pizza with a really crispy crust. So you can experiment with time. Normally, maybe 9 minutes at 325 to 350 is probably going to work. But you can experiment. You can change that. And can you think of any other toppings they might want to put on?
Yeah, you can experiment with the toppings. You can add more cheese. You can add more meat. It depends on, you know, how much you want to eat. And you can add some, you know, vegetable, maybe some green peppers.
Yeah, now that was one of my favorites that we didn't put on there. I wish we had of. But I love green pepper, high in vitamin C, low in carbs. And you can put a lot of green peppers on there. All kinds. Anything else that come to mind? How about spinach? Have you ever
Yeah,
eaten a
yeah.
spinach pizza?
Yeah, of course I have.
You
It's
can
really
have a
good. You can
spinach
just,
pizza.
add some
So
spinach.
just don't put on the really high carb stuff
Yeah.
like pineapple. There's pineapple pizzas, and that's got a lot of sugar. You don't want to do
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we ended up with great numbers. If we don't eat anything more for a while, that means our blood sugar is going to stay low for a while. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, our next experiment is going to be with a thick crust, a normal crust, I guess you could say, pizza.
Yeah.
One that you buy in the store, the crust that is. So it's going to be a homemade pizza more or less, but the crust will be a normal size and a normal thickness, and that means lots more carbs. You're getting a lot more bread. Remember, with pizza, the basic culprit that drives blood sugar crazy, it's not the toppings, it's not the spaghetti sauce, it's not the pepperoni, it's not the cheese, it's not the onions or green peppers or mushrooms or black olives. None of those things really has many carbs to them. It is the bread. If you can just deal with the bread issue, you're going to be good. So we will see you back here after a while with another experiment, and we'll see how that affects our blood sugar. What a blessing it is to be able to eat and enjoy pizza again. And one thing about this pizza is that it's easy to make and it doesn't take much time. If you found this video helpful, click on the little thumbs up like icon. The more likes we get, the higher YouTube will rank the videos in its search engine, and more people will be able to see them. You can check out our other diabetes resources on our website. Go to spiritofgrace.org/diabetes. We have several full-length videos made up of segments like this one, and various other features which relate to overcoming runaway blood sugar. Well, that's it for now. God bless, and see you again soon.